Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of The Perfect 10. The Perfect 10 is my 10-week series that I'm running on future skills. So the skills that I believe organizations have to develop now and in the future in order for the organization and its people to thrive. So I am Marilise de Villiers. I'm a performance coach, best-selling author and cybersecurity, people and change consultant. So The Perfect 10 is a series on my YouTube channel called Your Bullyproof Life. And the purpose of Your Bullyproof Life is to spark conversation about workplace cultures, and in particular to shine a spotlight on toxic workplace cultures. So, for example, workplace bullying, which is also the subject of my book, Raw, How to Tame the Bully Inside and Out. As a host, it is my role to write about and to spark debate about the staggering financial and emotional costs that are directly attributable to toxic workplace cultures. The Perfect 10 fits beautifully into that because it's all about how do we invest in our people and into our cultures so that we can create safe and inclusive workplaces where people can show up at their best every day. We are already in week 8 of the series, and this week is all about psychology mastery. So the importance of winning the inner game and the importance of having a winning mindset. And I'm delighted this week to be joined by Kingsley Johnson and Annie Vernon. So let me tell you a little bit more about Kingsley and Annie. Kingsley Johnson is the founder and managing director of Kinetic PD, a training and consultancy company that helps organizations embed the psychology of elite sport in their teams, supporting leaders to develop high-performance cultures and drive behaviour change. Annie Vernon is a 2-time world champion and Olympic silver medalist rower. Annie's passions lie in empowering others and understanding how they tick. As an athlete, she was fascinated by the inner workings of the mind and how that determined her physical performance. And since retiring, she's taken this interest a giant leap further by publishing Mind Games, which won the General Outstanding Sports Writing Award at the 2020 Telegraph British Sport Book Awards. So I'm going to hop over to Zoom next to have a chat with Kingsley and Annie. I hope you enjoy it. So welcome, Kingsley and Annie. It's amazing to have you with me here today. And I'm so excited to talk to you about psychology mastery. This is a topic that is so close to my heart. I write about it in my book, Raw, How to Tame the Bully Inside and Out. And I think, I realized, when I was on my journey and sort of the whole winning the inner game, I call it winning the inner game, was probably 80% of what I had to do in terms of overcoming the adversity that I was facing at the time. So that was a massively big realization for me. So I'm absolutely delighted to have the two of you here today, two stellar guests. So I'm going to start just by asking you both to share with me, what kind of psychology mastery mean to you and why it's so important. So Annie, can I start with you?
You can. I guess mastery is a really interesting one because I suppose that does hint at it being very individual. My idea of psychology mastery is very different to what it would mean to you, very different to somebody else in a different setting and a different requirements, because I guess all of us have a different level of demand for the way our psychology works. Yeah. When I was an athlete in full-time training, I needed my brain to work for me in a particular way, so I could control my body, control my thoughts, control emotions. Now I'm not an athlete anymore. I need a different kind of mastery over myself. So I would say kind of mastery of your psychology, it is very unique and very particular to what's going on. I suppose my definition of it would really be starting and finishing with self-awareness and self-understanding. And I know that's something that you're really passionate about. And just, being able to look in the mirror and say, do you know what I can see, it's not perfect, but it's fine, it's good enough, and I'm happy with it. And I suppose self-awareness, self-mastery, and self-acceptance to me is all part of the same thing.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And to echo Annie's thoughts as well, I think for me, when I look at my career coming from professional services firms and having sport as part of my early journey as well, but for me, it was about that ability to actually understand or be curious about why I was behaving or reacting in certain ways, or why members of my team were doing things that were maybe a bit different to how I would interpret them. And I suppose, as Annie says, that starting point being that self-awareness, understanding what drives you, what makes you tick. But then when you look at that in terms of sort of team dynamics or leadership as well, and understanding how to help your team to be better and to achieve more. So for me, it's always that starting point of, as Annie said, that individual mastery and understanding of self, and then looking at how we can utilize that to benefit those in our sphere of influence or those that we're leading.
Yes, and what I love about sort of the mastery component of it, is the whole mind. The mind is so powerful, the brain is so powerful. I always say, if you don't control that, it will control you, because our brains are designed to protect us, right, from danger. That's just the old sort of, that's what it was designed to do, right? So it's so important to recognize that, and I think that's, I know what you said, is the awareness, that we should be controlling our thoughts, because that creates meaning and that drives our behaviors, right? And I don't necessarily always think people think about fitness as exercise, as like exercise, but they don't necessarily think about fitness as inner size, which is a term I think John Assaraf, who does a lot of mind work, he's sort of empowering the world one mind at a time, I think is his company's, it's called Nero Gym, is his company's strapline. But I think it's that sort of the recognition that we've got to really train our brains every day as well. So, I mean, what does that look like for you? What do you think we need to do?
I absolutely, yes, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said about inner size. It's not a word I've ever heard, but I really like it. And I think it's true in the same way, if you don't train a muscle, the muscle will get weak. If you don't train a particular facet of your mental skills, it also will be weak. If you feel like you're lacking in confidence, well, have you ever thought about training your confidence? If you don't, your confidence muscle, so to speak, will be weak. Of course it will. So I suppose for me, it will be about identifying which mental skills, you really think you need to hone in on, whether it be resilience, confidence, teamwork, communication, any of those kind of mental skills. And then just establishing a way forward as to how you do, okay, what's my reality? Where am I now on a scale of 1 to 10 with my resilience? Let's say you are in an industry where there is a lot of failure, you're constantly facing setbacks and being presented with people telling you, no, you failed, you can't do this, we don't want you. Okay, so you really need to train your resilience in that scenario. So where are you now? What's your reality? And how do you then take steps to improve that resilience? And actually, again, it's all very individual. For some people, it's all about self-talk, writing things down. For other people, they'll like to listen to others and have that input from the outside. Other people like evidence. They like data-driven information and evidence that they can really rely on. So everything is very unique as to how it's best for you to train. But I think just my world of sport, the idea that people seem to have that you are born with rock solid confidence, you are born with unbelievable levels of resilience to weather the highs and the lows, you are born with this natural ability to just slot into any team and work in it seamlessly. It's just not true. Just not true at all. You might be born with slightly higher levels of some of those things compared to the average population, but to get to where you need to get to so you can perform on the world stage in front of hundreds of thousands of people, that takes training.
I absolutely love that. And I think, I want to pick up on the sort of the talent versus attitude piece, because I think, you've sort of said that just there, you're obviously born with talents. You need to have a certain amount of talent to do a particular sport, but then I think the attitude and the commitment trumps that, you know. So I've seen so many talented people in my life where they've just been lazy and they've just not used their talents, you know. And then I've seen people who are average and they just work their butts off and they achieve amazing things, you know. And I love that. I love that sort of, and it comes down, as you say, to the commitment, and it's building that resilience muscle every single day. So Kingsley, I want to pick up on that because I know that there's some research that was done, the 5 hashtag more than medals attitudes. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about the research, and then we'll come on to the 5 attitudes.
Okay, that's fine. So the Dame Kelly Holmes Trust commissioned some research, and they asked Professor David Labelli of the University of Stirling to conduct some research into the attitudes and behaviours that super elite athletes have. What are the things that differentiate them between, say, for example, your standard athletes? What makes somebody a gold medal winner or have the ability to go and become world champion? And in his research, he distilled down to 5 principles. And they were essentially confidence, focus, resilience, motivation, and determination. And so I suppose, building on what Annie said, it is that idea of having that confidence, that inner belief in yourself, and that ability to maintain that when things don't go according to plan. It's fine, or it's quite easy to possibly be confident when everything around you is rosy. But what happens when the chips are down, when you're coming back from an injury or your competitor is breaking records, and you apply that in a work setting as well, and it starts to get really, really interesting. And that focus, that ability, again, to have those habits or those strategies or those methods to maintain that laser focus. And again, where things around you are getting a bit crazy, how do you maintain the ability to bring your A game, to perform at your best, you know? And I guess with focus, it's really lovely, some of the work done around flow theory and the idea of being in the groove, as musicians may call it, or athletes call it, being in the zone, and finding ways to maximize that, where your challenge is equal to your abilities. And we've all had those moments where time just seems to disappear. And so that really is impactful in focus. And resilience, again, that's sort of looking at how do you maintain your focus and your attention, that bounce back ability. What are the mechanisms, what are the tools that you use to, again, maintain that performance in the face of adversity? And motivation, I guess, motivation's a really interesting one, because I personally am starting to believe more and more that motivation is intrinsic, i.e. it's internal, it comes from within. Whereas there will be external factors that either prompt or remind or impact that motivation. If somebody doesn't want to do something, they're not going to do it regardless, but there will be external factors that can impact that. And again, when you look at that from an elite athlete perspective, but also from a workplace perspective, and it starts to really become quite powerful in that understanding your own motivations and being aware of the external motivations, or as a leader, creating the environment that promotes the internal motivations of your people. And I think that that's also quite exciting and interesting. And finally, determination. And I guess to me, that's about that desire to change, that desire to continually develop, that ability to perform at your best, but consistently be looking for ways to be better. And I think that those 5 really sort of encapsulate that mindset, as it were.
Yeah, and I want to reflect, because I'm keen to explore this more in a workplace setting. And I love everything you've said. But I think a lot of people will listen to that and it would be, you know, how do I manage that? How do I control that when I'm at the mercy of my environment, of my external circumstances? You know, how do I actually navigate these sort of setbacks or adversity, whatever you want to call it, but it's almost like you don't feel like you have control over the situation. How would you advise people to approach that?
Would you like me to go first, Annie?
If you like, Kingsley, yeah.
No problem. Okay, so I guess my take on it is control the controllables. Yeah. Like you say, we can't control the way that other people interact with us, but we can control how we respond. With our ability to, as Danny mentioned, exercise those resilience muscles or those confidence muscles, there is a way that we can control how we perceive things that happen to us or how we react to those things. And so a classic example is if somebody says something horrible to you and it really, really, you take it personally in that particular moment, we have the ability to look at what that can do to us and how we can combat that. But I accept that there's oftentimes, especially in workplace environments, where it's the culture doesn't support, or it's almost counterintuitive. It doesn't allow, or it doesn't promote the idea of being able to stand up or being able to look around your teammates and actually feel like they've got your back. And I suppose that to me would be, if I was looking at it in terms of how do I build my ability to function or be my best in a particular scenario where I don't feel like I have control, I would look at the elements where I can control and making sure that I'm doing the best that I can.
Love that. Annie, is there anything you would like to add?
What is the workplace now in our post-COVID world? Workplaces can mean lots of different things now than they did 8 months ago, can't they? And I suppose it's also recognising that even though a huge number of people will be working from home, they'll be working, in distance teams all over the world, potentially just communicating like we are over a flat screen. The teamwork that we exhibit at work is possibly more important now than it was when we were all physically sat next to each other in an office, and recognising that, a lot of people will be perhaps really struggling in their home environment, or perhaps their home office isn't set up for them to work that well. And a lot of us, human beings we're group animals, aren't we? Most of us aren't kind of predisposed to work on our own. We like working with other people, even if some of our colleagues might drive us up the wall sometimes. So I think recognising that even though we're not sat in the same room, we can still have a really both positive and negative impact on each other. And actually taking the time to go the extra mile for each other in these straitened times, even though we might not have laid eyes on each other for 6 months, recognising that actually we can still, like I said, really positively impact each other's behaviours and negatively impact each other's behaviours. So I suppose just recognising that, the world has changed, times are really challenging, and we should still look to enforce the right values and behaviours in the workplace, even though the workplace might be, sat on the spare bed with a laptop on your knees.
I'm so glad you highlight that, because I think that's absolutely right. Workplace today, what is workplace? And I think it is from any place, anywhere, but it is how do we maintain that connection with people. And I had a fascinating interview last week with Tracy Groves and Joel Siegel, and we talked about dignity. And Tracy talked about we all have to become guardians of dignity, so not just protecting our own dignity, but also how we honor other people's dignity. And then if you're a leader, and I think everybody's a leader or a role model, how do you honor and how do you lead with dignity? And I think even now, like also especially now in this sort of COVID environment, I think we are so much more. We have so much more of a responsibility to focus on the well-being of people. Because you're right, people are really struggling, and we've seen the mental health crisis just explode in the world, and but for once we're all in the same boat, and so we should be able to empathize, and we should be able to relate with one another in a very, very meaningful way, you know. So it's such an amazing opportunity, I think, as well at the same time.
Yeah, I'm sure nobody is missing their commute.
Yeah.
And I think for me it's also taking responsibility for what we surround ourselves with. Mm-hmm. And by that, in terms of enabling you to grow those muscles, those mental muscles, as I said, or as Annie mentioned as well, it's actually taking stock of the things that you're exposing yourself to, the things that you're sharing. If you go onto Twitter, it's obviously a place where there's a distinct lack of empathy. And why put that on yourself? And there's so many fantastic resources and so much information out there that can help in terms of developing that mastery of your psychology, of your mindset. And it's taking that decision to affect those changes, and then surrounding yourself with people, or attending sessions like this, or listening to wonderful podcasts like this, where that inspiration can be continued and developed and maintained, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
So Annie, I'm a little bit curious, because obviously, you know, what goes on when you're sort of in that sort of elite sport, and you're in that sort of environment where you're competing at that high level.
Yeah.
What does kind of the mindset work look and feel like? I mean, I'm sort of just stepping into your shoes for a moment, getting ready for a race, or preparing for a race, or after the race. I mean, what does that, just bring it to life for us a bit, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I think the idea of you know, sports psychology and mental skills training, I think it's also important to remember that is still quite new. Right. The idea of people regularly seeing a psychologist to talk through the mental side, as opposed to their coach who works with the physical side, that, you know, we're still in early days with sports psychology and professional sport. And I think that reflects what's happening in society. You know, the concept of mental health in the workplace, no one would have used that phrase perhaps even 10 years ago. And now it's something that people are very aware of, which is obviously a hugely, hugely positive thing. So I think the idea of having kind of structured mental skills training is still quite a new thing in elite sport. And it's probably a process that up till now, most people have just undertaken on their own, you know, figuring stuff out for yourself. And to me, that's partly why it's so interesting. You know, I think in sport, the physical side is pretty linear. You know, you train harder, you get better. Generally, that's how it works. But with the mental side, you know, you can make have a massive revelation about yourself, you know, on a rainy Wednesday morning in March, or you can have a huge learning at the World Championship final at the end of August. And you don't really know when you're going to learn those huge lessons about yourself. It can just hit you from left field, which, yeah, for me is why it's so exciting. It's not at all a linear improvement. It's kind of one step forward, 10 steps back, 20 steps forward, 15 steps sideways. You know, and you just don't really know when you're suddenly going to have one of those, right, I see moments, and they're so exciting. I think thinking about myself personally, psychology was something I always think I wasn't very good at, which is probably why I've been so interested in it, because I had to really work hard at it. In the same way people say the worst athletes make the best coaches, because if you haven't found something intuitive, and if you've never found something very natural and quite easy, then it makes you far better placed to explain it to other people. Yeah. And I'm sure in your experience, you can probably agree with that.
Absolutely.
You know, the people who have struggled are the people who are then better placed to say to someone else, well, look, you know, starting from first principles, this is how it goes. So I think I always made it a really conscious process. Okay, what do I need to do? Where do I need to get to? What do I need to learn along the way? And who and where can I learn that from? And I suppose, like I said earlier, that process is so individual. Mm-hmm. It really is. For some people, they will really look around them at other people. Some people will listen to their coach. Some people will read lots of books, listen to lots of podcasts. For me, it was really just about having reflection. You know, for me, reflection is the key skill that I had to get hold of. And it was just taking, you know, anything from 30 seconds to 30 minutes at the end of a big training session or a race, just thinking, okay, what did I learn? Just processing it in my head. And the end of it kind of coming to a conclusion. Okay, so what I need to improve is this, or what I need to get my head around is that. And for me, it was the teamwork piece. I always felt like I was really a bit behind the curve on teamwork, and I really had to work hard at it to get myself up to the level. Whereas, for other people, it came a lot more naturally. But I think what most people learn pretty early on is when you talk about the big occasions, the big races, the Olympic finals, there's a race head for everyone. There's an optimum mental space that everyone has to get into, and it's different for every single one of us. Some people will be sat there before the race, headphones on, loud music pumping. Some people will sit there, I don't know, putting a bit of makeup on, painting their nails, whatever it is to get you into that optimum headspace, then that works for you. Somebody I interviewed for my book, Mind Games, who's a 400-meter runner, she said a big thing for her was her coloured contact lenses. She said, I put my race kit on, I do all my physical preparation, but I always had to pop in my coloured contacts before I raced. And she said, because that was my thing. That made me feel like I was going to run faster. I was 6 inches taller. I was stronger. Almost like putting on a suit of armour. And I mean, the subtitle of my book is Lucky Socks, because although we laugh about it, actually Lucky Socks, or your equivalent of Lucky Socks, that does have a role. It definitely has a role. If you put on a pair of socks and they make you feel better, wear those socks.
Yeah, I'm thinking about my dad, and I'm thinking about, he used to, when I was a little girl, he used to play rugby, and he was always wearing the same undergarments.
Exactly.
It's like oversharing, but I mean, it's that superstition, isn't it? But
of course it does. If that's your thing, and as long as you understand that it's not just the socks that matter.
Yeah.
If you don't say, right, I wear my lucky socks and I don't need to worry about anything else, that's obviously not true. But if putting on, and in the workplace, a lot of women wear really nice underwear. Nobody sees it, but they wear it because it makes them feel really positive and really empowered. Yes. Well, that's great. If that's your thing, do it.
Yeah. And I think it's about putting you in a peak state. Like Tony Robbins talks a lot about peak states. And I think that's that sort of whatever it takes to put yourself in that peak state mentally and physically, do whatever it takes. And as you say, it is such a personal thing, for us.
Yeah, hugely.
You're smiling, Kingsley. What did I say?
I just absolutely agree. I think in sport and in work and in science, finding the things that enable you to be your best. Of course, why not? Try everything. Try and share and inspire others. So to me, that's why I was smiling. And I'm not planning on wearing any fancy undergarments.
Or heels. So I have to say, one of the biggest sort of lessons that I'm learning, because building your own business it's just trial and error, and every day is a school day, but also it's that sort of looking at failure as a learning. There is no such thing as failure. It is genuinely just a learning. And I loved what you said, Annie, about the reflection, and then to say, what can I learn from this situation? What can I learn from this failure? And how do I take this forwards in a positive way, and I think that is what life is all about. I think again, I'm a big Tony Robbins fan, and I just literally over the last weekend completed a 3-day intensive training course with him and his business partner Dean Graciosi, and actually all of the things that they said is sort of just chiming with me, like in my head, but actually Tony said that one of perfection is the lowest standard that a human being can have, meaning there is no such thing as perfection, and we constantly have to evolve, we constantly have to learn. And that's, for me, is why the psychology is so important, because it is about, to come back to your point right at the beginning about confidence, Kingsley, it is about how do you navigate those setbacks and psychologically see them as a way to get mentally and emotionally fit, and the repetition, and to sort of keep going. I think that's so important, so important.
Yeah, can I just jump in there, because this is something that's just really made me think of, is something that one of the sports psychologist that I interviewed for Mind Games said to me, he said, and the way he encapsulated it I thought was fantastic. He said that the key part about performance in sport has to be consistency. And he said that, failure is fine as long as you don't make the same mistake twice. In the same way, putting in a one-off good performance is totally useless unless you can repeat it. And I thought, yeah, that's kind of a really good way of looking at it. That having a fantastic performance is wonderful, but if afterwards you say, well, actually, I don't know where that came from, I don't know why that was so good. Well, it was useless because you can't repeat it. And in the same way, yeah, making a mistake is fine as long as you never make the same mistake twice, because that implies you're not learning. So yeah, the whole thing is about learning from successes and learning from failures, and being able to just create that consistency and predictability of performance. And certainly the best rowers that I rowed with, consistency was why they were so good. Rain or shine, whatever crewmates, whatever situation, whatever boat they were in, they were just, you always knew what you get from them, always.
And like you say, when you apply that into the workplace as well, and that desire to make sure your standards are consistent. And if you put in a fantastic pitch, or if you have a fantastic proposal meeting, or if you do a fantastic piece of delivery, how do you then ensure that becomes your new standard? And then what do you do to look at then how can we raise that again? So yeah, absolutely echo.
Particularly with leadership, I would say. I think everyone in an organisation, you might love your boss, you might really not like them on a personal level, but you've just got to, all you want from them is consistency. You want to know what they expect, you want to know what values and behaviours, you want to know how success will be measured and how success will be rewarded. You just want consistency, don't you? Really.
And if I relate that to the work situation that I found myself in, where I was it was a toxic work relationship. The thing that I always kind of come back to is how turbulent that relationship was, how inconsistent that relationship was, because I wouldn't know whether it was going to be a good day or a bad day. It was like literally like this roller coaster ride, so you rock up every day not knowing how the person is going to behave, and it just kills you, because you just like, that uncertainty, it's just a horrible experience.
Sure.
So, but I guess, I want to kind of pick up on Mind Games a little bit more, because I want to just share with people what the book, Mind Games is sort of a giveaway, lucky socks. Probably a bit self-explanatory, but if you just want to give us a little bit of a synopsis, what would you sort of say the book is about?
Well, the book has the longest title in the world, for which I apologise. Essentially, my publisher and I couldn't decide on a title, so we just threw in all the titles we wanted into the book. So the full title is Mind Games, Determination, Doubt and Lucky Socks, The Insider's Guide to the Psychology of Elite Athletes. So if everyone's still with me after that lengthy term, so essentially the book aims to trace the process of much of what we've discussed, how elite athletes have trained their mental skills in exactly the same way they've trained their physical skills. And understanding that it's, like I've said, it starts from a process of self-awareness, trial and error, learning from other people, seeing how somebody else does something and thinking, yeah, I like that, what can I take from that person? And it covers a range of mental skills, including confidence, teamwork, dealing with success, dealing with failure, coaching, which was a really interesting one, because as an athlete, I've never been a coach, so I don't know what coaching is like. So then I had to kind of stand on the other side of the fence and try and understand what a sports coach can do, cannot do, and what the best coaches are like. But the question I try to address straight off is that there's a heck of a lot of really talented sports people out there. We will all know people, in fact, perhaps some of us were those people who at school, in your class, there was one person who was really good at netball, really good at football, really good at running. That was their thing. And they were John the swimmer or whatever it was. And some of them go on to be professional sports people, but a huge number of them don't. So I wanted to understand, okay, so if we've got 10 people, they all got the physical attributes to make it to the top. How come only 2 of them do and the other 8 don't? So, and to me, the answer is their mental side. And I called that the chicken or pig conundrum, based on the saying that, you have a plate of bacon and eggs, the chicken's involved, but the pig is committed. So I wanted to understand why. It's not everyone will like that simile, but I quite like it.
I love it. I mean, obviously,
yeah. I mean, our vegan listeners probably won't quite like it, but I mean, to me, it sums it up. Why are some people involved in sport and some people are absolutely committed to making the top, come what may? And I'm sure in the workplace, exactly the same kind of people exist. Some people have got their eyes on the top, and some people, and there's nothing wrong with it, but some people don't have their eyes on the top. So why are some people chickens and some people pigs? And you'll have to read the book to find out.
Yes, and yeah, I can't wait. And we'll tell. Where can people? It's a book. It's on Amazon, right?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's in all the usual places, Waterstones, all the regular bookshops.
I mean, if people just search Mind Games, they'll find it, right? Mind
Games, Annie Vernon. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because there's probably other books. I think I did that, and I had to add your name to find it. Right. So I think that's it's important, right? So I can't believe the time's up. Like we always run out of time on these because it's just so fascinating, and I just love having these conversations. Kingsley, I know that your company does a lot of work in this space around high performance mindset and how to embed a high performance mindset in teams. Do you want to just tell our viewers a little bit about your company and what you do and what you stand for?
Yeah, that's fine. I think for us, it's about inspiring teams within organizations to achieve more. And we do that through a variety of workshops and programs and coaching services. And we utilize the psychology of elite sport and the lessons and stories from the athletes that are part of our delivery teams to bring those concepts such as confidence or resilience or bring them to life. And so provide practical tools and methods and strategies based on psychological research to enable it to mean a bit more, and so that you can actually implement these things and start to see results. So that's in a nutshell what we do.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I guess what I would sort of encourage people to do, I mean, to come right back to the concept of inner size, so the same way we do exercise 4 or 5 times a week, which would be ideal. I think we should also, I would encourage, my viewers to also get into the habit of feeding your mind every day, like 30 minutes every day to feed your mind and really just whichever way, shape or form you learn, so as Annie said earlier, some read books, some need to learn from experience, podcasts, videos, there's so much we can do, but find something you're passionate about, you're interested in, and then just feed your mind every day, because I think it's that sort of, fitness that we've got to build. So I always think about emotional and mental intelligence as you've got the capability, but you're not necessarily going to do it. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do it. But if you say emotional and mental fitness, that's a different. And that's where you show up every day and you consistently, develop that muscle. I think that's so important.
So, I really like that psychology, actually. It's kind of, your skill versus your fitness to do so.
Yeah. So thank you very much, both. I mean, is there any sort of final tip or thought that you want to leave our viewers with? Just one sort of thing.
Kingsley?
I'd say for me,
I'm just going to buy myself some time there.
No worries. So I think about when I think about mindset and having an IT background, I go back to looking at mindset in terms of if our brains are computers, then our mindset is that operating system. So whether it's Windows or Mac OS, and we can develop, we can update, we can upgrade our OS. And it's about, like you say, making that commitment to nourishing ourselves and seeking out others who share our views and want to help us to improve and get better. And so that's the one thing I would share.
Fab. Love that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess very similar. I suppose my closing thought would be, let's all just take a little time just to understand ourselves occasionally. So as well as looking at our external appearance, let's almost turn our eyes around and check out our internal appearance and just see what you find and like what you find, love what you find.
Self-compassion, kindness, kindness to self and kindness to others. That's my motto, right?
Yes, I saw that. I love it.
Work hard, play hard, and be kind. So on that high note, thank you both. I'm really, really grateful to have you both with me today. And yeah, absolutely love the conversation. Very, very fascinating. I've learned a lot. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Marilise.
Thank you for having us, Marilise.